There's a certain silence that wraps around you when your own child forgets you exist. It isn't loud like grief or sharp like betrayal. It's soft, almost gentle, but it gnaws, like water dripping in a sink after midnight. I was sitting by the window of my little apartment, curtains drawn back, my coat on the hook, suitcase packed 2 days early, waiting. It was Christmas Eve, and I was waiting for a knock that never came. My name is Lorraine Mays. I'm 67 years old, retired seamstress, widow of a good man, and mother to one grown son who used to think I hung the moon. His name is Darren, and this is the story of the moment he stopped seeing me as a mother and started treating me like an old obligation. Now, before I go on, if stories like this make you feel something, if they remind you of the weight of family, love, and quiet revenge, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share more stories just like this. The day before Christmas Eve, I texted Darren to confirm everything. Hey, sweetheart, just making sure I should be ready at noon tomorrow. You said you'd pick me up for Christmas week at the house. No reply. I waited. By the next morning, still no response. I called, straight to voicemail. I checked Facebook, and there he was posting pictures of his wife Melanie baking cookies with their 2 kids. Can't wait for family Christmas. He wrote, family. I wasn't in the picture, not in the photos, not even in the plan. I messaged him again, politely, carefully. I didn't want to sound needy. Just checking in again, Darren. Let me know if plans have changed. I'll understand. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a single-line text. Cold. Flat. Didn't know you were still planning to come. Things are kind of full this year. Maybe next time. My fingers went numb. My eyes stayed dry, but not because I wasn't hurt. Because something inside me turned. Like a switch. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was intentional exclusion. And not just from dinner or Christmas gifts, but from my role as his mother, his family, his everything once. He and Melanie had been living in my second house, a modest but beautiful 2-story place in South Bend. Paid off. Signed over to them under a casual agreement. Take care of it, pay the utilities, raise your family in it. It's still under my name, but it's yours as long as you need it. No paperwork, just trust. Darren used to call me his rock, his constant. He cried when his father passed, and I held everything together for them, for all of us. And somewhere along the way, they just decided I didn't matter anymore. So I replied, understood. Then I stood up, poured myself a glass of wine, and pulled out the thin manila folder from my bottom drawer. Inside, the deed. The house was still mine. They'd never transferred the title. Not officially. Not legally. All it would take was one signature, one drive to the courthouse, and one call to a very capable lawyer I'd worked with during the early years of my husband's estate planning. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of sadness, but clarity. Christmas morning came. Snow on the rooftops. Joy in other people's homes. And I walked calmly to my car and drove straight to the county assessor's office. It was quiet. The woman behind the desk wore a candy cane pin and asked if I needed help. I laid the folder in front of her. I'd like to reclaim control over my secondary property. Tenant has no lease, no agreement, no payment, and no permission to occupy anymore. Her eyes flicked to the name, Darren Mays. I nodded. She raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, just slid a few documents my way. Within an hour, everything was signed. Official. Stamped. Filed. 3 days later, I stood in front of the house. The snow had started melting. The lights were still on the eaves. Melanie's minivan was in the driveway. I knocked. Darren answered, holding a half-eaten cinnamon roll, wearing pajama pants and a sheepish smile like nothing had happened. Mom, hey, look about the message. I handed him a folded envelope. What's this? Notice to vacate. I said. He blinked. What? I own this home, Darren, and since you didn't expect me for Christmas, I certainly don't expect you to keep living here on my dime. Mom, come on. This is insane. No, I said, finally looking him square in the eye. What's insane is raising a boy, giving him the roof over his head, and being told you're not expected, like I'm some unwanted guest in a life I helped build. Melanie came to the door, her face pale. You can't be serious. I am. Darren looked furious now. Where are we supposed to go? The kids. You're smart. You'll figure it out. You're not homeless. You're just not entitled anymore. He stepped forward like he wanted to argue, but I walked away, got in my car, turned the key, and drove. It wasn't joy I felt. Not exactly, but it was peace, power, and the beginning of something I should have done years ago. Stop apologizing for giving too much, because when they take your presence for granted, take the property. I thought the hardest part would be walking away from the house I gave my son. I was wrong. The hardest part was what happened after. 3 days after handing Darren the notice to vacate, I received a text message from Melanie. Not Darren, not the son I carried and fed and forgave too many times. No, it was her. Lorraine, you've made your point. But this isn't just Darren's house anymore. This is our children's home. You're hurting your grandkids more than anyone. Please reconsider. A guilt trip wrapped in pearls and passive aggression. I didn't reply. I'd spent the better part of the last 20 years carrying the emotional weight of everyone around me. And when the one time came that I needed to be carried, just for a single holiday, they let me drop like I didn't matter. I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore. Still, I was prepared. I knew Melanie wouldn't stop there. I'd seen that look in her eyes before. The one she wore at her wedding, standing next to Darren, when I offered to help pay for the reception, and she said, "If you can afford to, I guess." Like kindness from me was expected. Like sacrifice was my identity. But this time, I wasn't playing that part. The next morning, I got a knock at my door. I opened it to find a well-dressed man in his early 40s, holding a letter and clipboard. Mrs. Mays? Yes. I'm from Jefferson and Lawton. I represent Darren and Melanie Mays. I'm delivering a formal letter of intent to dispute your claim of ownership. I took the letter. Didn't even flinch. Cute, I said, folding it neatly and placing it on the hallway table. Let me guess, they think I'm senile or confused? He looked momentarily embarrassed. I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am, but I do advise you to read the letter and consult your own legal counsel. I already have, I said. He's been on standby. Then you'll know what to expect. I nodded. Yes, I expect to win. My lawyer's name is Marcy, sharp as a tack, mid-50s, eyes that cut through spin like scissors through silk. I faxed her the letter and called immediately. They're claiming you made a verbal gift of the house, she said flatly, that Darren and Melanie were promised ownership. Is that even enforceable? In a dream, not in court. The property was never transferred. No deed, no legal agreement, no rent, no purchase. And you filed a notice of revocation before any tenancy laws kicked in. They're stalling. Why? To make you cave emotionally. They're hoping you'll fold. Grandkids. Guilt. The usual. I smiled. Then let's respond with something unexpected. She chuckled. Lorraine, I've waited my whole career for a client like you. 2 days later, Marcy filed a motion to proceed with a legal eviction through the court. We also filed a cease and desist letter to Darren's legal team. No further communication was to come directly to me. I had representation now. I wasn't just a lonely old mother anymore. I was a plaintiff. I knew they'd be furious, and I wasn't wrong. Because the next thing that happened, they called the news. I was drinking tea on a Thursday morning, watching reruns of a British detective show, when my phone rang again. A friend from the neighborhood. Lorraine, you didn't tell me you were famous. Pardon? You're on the local news. Channel 8. Right now. Melanie's being interviewed on her front porch. I rushed to my laptop, pulled up the live stream, and there she was. Melanie, standing in front of the home I gave them, wiping crocodile tears from her eyes. She's evicting her own grandchildren, she said to the camera. Right after Christmas. No explanation. Just a notice taped to the door. We're trying to shield the kids from it all. The news anchor gave that concerned, performative nod I've always hated. No one asked to hear my side. But that's the thing about silence. It gives you time to plan. Marcy and I met the next day and reviewed our evidence. She smiled as she flipped through the documents I'd kept for years. Utility bills in my name. Property taxes paid from my account. No rent checks. No rental agreement. Not even a lease template printed. Just handouts and generosity. All of it tracked, copied, notarized. They have no case, she said. They're trying to fight inheritance law with emotional manipulation. I sighed. They think the public will rally behind the idea of a heartless old woman throwing her family out. They forgot you're the one who gave them the house to begin with, and paid for Darren's schooling, covered Melanie's hospital bills after her first baby, lent them money for the minivan, watched the kids when they couldn't afford daycare. Marcy leaned forward. Would you like to go public? I paused, then nodded. Yes, but not with an interview. Something quieter, smarter. By Monday, we published a simple online statement through Marcy's firm. No emotion, no accusations, just facts. The house located at 14 Cherry Ridge Drive was never legally transferred to Darren or Melanie Mays. The property remains under the ownership of Lorraine Mays, who has maintained full financial responsibility since acquisition. The current tenants have no legal claim. A notice to vacate was issued after a pattern of emotional exclusion and verbal disrespect culminated in a deliberate Christmas disinvitation. Lorraine Mays seeks no sympathy, only resolution. That statement spread, and not in the way Melanie hoped. Commenters on the news channel's page flipped. Wait, the house isn't even theirs. She gave them a free place to live, and they ghosted her for Christmas? Nah, if my mom gave me a house, I'd worship the ground she walked on. These grown kids are the problem, not the woman reclaiming her power. The public turned. I didn't feel joy. I felt seen. And then the message came. It was from Darren. No press. No legalese. Just him. Mom, I'm sorry. I stared at the words, not because I believed them, but because I recognized what they really meant. They were losing, and now they wanted mercy. But mercy, like presents, should never be taken for granted. Darren's message sat on my phone like a letter dropped through the wrong mailbox. Too late, too soft, too suspicious. Mom, I'm sorry. 3 words, 6 months too late. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, though I was but because I needed to see how far he was willing to go. Apologies like that often carry a second motive. And I was right. The next day, I received a voicemail from a woman with a honeyed voice and fake concern dripping from every syllable. "Lorraine, it's Melanie. I just wanted to say, Darren and I both regret how Christmas played out. We've been under a lot of pressure. Work, the kids, finances. You know how it is. I think we all just need to sit down, as a family. Talk. No lawyers. No more drama. No more drama after dragging my name through the news, after lawyer threats and subtle accusations of mental incompetence. They didn't want resolution. They wanted rescue. I didn't respond. But the part that burned me more than anything else, they still didn't tell the children the truth. I found that out from my friend Mavis, who runs the after-school art program where both my grandkids, Lily and Carson, go once a week. Mavis called me one evening, gentle concern in her voice. "Lorraine, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but I overheard Lily saying you went away for Christmas because you were sick, that you didn't want to come." I froze. Melanie had lied to her children to cover up their guilt, to make me the absent one, to make me the villain. It was around that time that I opened the manila envelope marked Archive 2005. Inside were records from my late husband's pension disbursement, a single check that had come through the month before he passed. It was for $92,000. He never touched a dime of it because he asked me, with a quiet hand on my shoulder, to use it to buy something lasting, something that would serve the family, a legacy. That's how the second house came to be, Cherry Ridge Drive. It was his gift, his final contribution to our son's future. But it was in my name, because Darren was too young, too careless, and because even then my husband said, "Make sure you're never left out." He knew, he always knew, that giving without conditions is a beautiful thing, but it also leaves you wide open to being erased. I took the pension receipt, the house deed, and the letter my husband wrote with it, faded now but still legible, and I placed them neatly into a new folder labeled Legacy Defense. If Darren and Melanie wanted to test the limits of truth, they were about to meet its full extent. A week later, the formal hearing for possession was scheduled. They contested. Melanie showed up in a stiff blazer, clutching a leather notebook, playing the role of distressed mother. Darren looked haggard, tired, graying at the temples. I almost felt something for him, until he sat down and refused to look at me. The judge, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s, reviewed our submissions. She flipped through the packet Marcy had prepared and paused when she reached the letter from my husband. She read it aloud. "To my dearest Lorraine, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. I want you to use this money to buy something solid, something that will keep our family warm and standing long after I'm gone. Make sure your name stays on it. You always give so much, but one day you may need to take something back. And I want you to have that right." There wasn't a sound in the courtroom when she finished. Darren's jaw was clenched. Melanie stared ahead, blinking furiously. The judge spoke. "This letter doesn't carry legal weight, but it certainly carries moral weight. And everything in your record supports Mrs. May's position. You've lived in this house rent-free for over a decade, paid no taxes, no mortgage, no upkeep expenses. No agreement exists that overrides her ownership. My ruling is in favor of the plaintiff. The property is to be vacated within 30 days. Melanie gasped. Darren rubbed his forehead like he'd just been struck. I stayed still, because inside, I wasn't celebrating. I was grieving. This wasn't about a house. It was about everything it represented. The years, the sacrifices, the warmth I gave them without asking for anything back. Until now. After the hearing, I walked out quietly, But as I reached the front steps of the courthouse, Darren followed. Mom, wait. I stopped. He came up beside me, hands in his coat pockets, eyes darting everywhere, but at me. I didn't think it would go this far. You didn't think I would stand up for myself, I corrected. He exhaled. I don't know what to say. You already said it, I said, facing him. When you told me I wasn't expected. That said it all. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. You just didn't think it would cost you anything. He shook his head slowly, tears beginning to rise. I messed up. Yes, you did. And I'll always love you. But love doesn't mean enabling. I gave you a gift. You treated it like a given. Silence stretched between us. I'm sorry, he whispered again. This time, it sounded real. But real doesn't always mean enough. The move-out date came. They packed their boxes. Melanie avoided eye contact. The kids didn't understand. And I didn't explain. Some truths are for adulthood. Some lessons aren't taught. They're lived. When the house was empty again, I walked through every room. The faded nursery wallpaper, the dent in the staircase banister, where Carson once crashed his scooter, the nail holes from Lily's drawings on the kitchen wall. This wasn't just a structure. It was evidence of all I gave and all they thought they deserved, without asking, without thanking, without remembering I existed until I made noise. I didn't sell the house. I donated it to a transitional housing organization for single mothers escaping domestic abuse. They moved in 3 weeks later. A young woman named Jasmine hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. You don't know what this means, she said. But I did, because giving with grace is still part of me, just not to those who forget me. The moment I handed over the keys to Jasmine, something inside me finally settled. It wasn't joy. It wasn't revenge. It was release. I'd clutched onto that house like it was my only proof I ever gave something meaningful. But in giving it to someone who truly needed it, not someone who expected it, I found the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Jasmine and her little boy, Micah, moved in that Friday. No fuss, no social media announcement, just quiet gratitude, paint samples, and warm homemade muffins she brought me the day after. But silence doesn't stay silent for long, especially when entitled people are involved. Melanie showed up at my apartment a week later, uninvited, unapologetic. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, a trench coat that didn't match the weather, and a scowl that probably hadn't left her face since the court ruling. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. I just want to talk, she said quickly. I didn't ask, I replied. Her jaw tightened. You gave away the house. I said nothing. To a stranger? Her name is Jasmine. She's a mother who actually appreciates what's been given to her. Melanie took off her sunglasses and folded her arms. Do you understand what you've done? You've made us homeless. You're not homeless, I said calmly. You're just housed in reality now. There's a difference. We're living in Darren's co-worker's basement, she snapped. The kids are miserable. They've lost everything. No, they lost comfort. There's a difference. And I suggest you stop blaming everyone else for consequences you chose. Her eyes burned. You'll regret this. Possibly, I said, but I won't regret reclaiming my dignity. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but all that came out was air. Thin, tired, bitter. Then she walked away, and I shut the door. For good. But life has a strange way of tugging at you, right, when you think it's done unraveling. The very next morning, there was a letter in my mailbox, handwritten, in bright pink ink, the way only a child could manage. From Lily Mays to Grandma Lorraine. I sat down on my floral couch and opened it slowly. Dear Grandma, Mommy said you're sick, but I saw on TV that you were on the news. You didn't look sick. You looked sad. Daddy doesn't talk about you, but I miss you. I miss your lasagna and your garden and your funny stories. Carson cried when we left the house. I told him not to worry, because Grandma always makes things okay. Are you mad at us? Are you mad at me? I hope not. I love you. Love. Lily. P.S. Mommy took your picture off the fridge and said you're not coming back. I read the letter 3 times. Then I cried harder than I had since my husband's funeral, because this wasn't just about property or revenge anymore. This was about erasure. Melanie hadn't just tried to cut me out of her life. She was cutting me out of my grandchildren's lives. And in doing so, she was rewriting history with her own version of the truth. But the thing about children, they remember what love feels like. And Lily remembered me. I sat down at my little writing desk and pulled out my stationery blue linen paper with pressed flowers on the corners. I wrote back, "My dearest Lily, no, sweetheart, I am not mad at you. I could never be mad at you or Carson. Grown-ups sometimes make bad choices, and sometimes those choices hurt people, even when they don't mean to. But I love you, and I always will. I live in the same apartment with the white rose bushes out front. Anytime you want to come plant something with me again, the door is open. P.S. I saved your drawing of the rainbow unicorn. It's framed in my kitchen. I mailed the letter that afternoon. No return address. Just the knowledge that one day, when she's old enough, Lily will know the truth wasn't what her mother said. It was in the garden beds, the rainbow unicorn, and the love I never stopped offering." 2 weeks passed. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Marcy called. "Lorraine, do you know someone named Franklin Wade?" I furrowed my brow. Why does that name sound familiar? He's the buyer for a commercial real estate firm. He just reached out to us. He wants to speak to you privately. Said it's urgent. I agreed to a meeting. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the courthouse. Franklin was in his 50s, wore a tweed blazer, and had a smile like someone who lived in a world of contracts and corner offices. "I heard about the house on Cherry Ridge," he said. "What you did for that single mother. That was powerful." I nodded slowly. "How did you hear?" He leaned forward. "My sister was in the audience the day of your court hearing. She's a paralegal. She told me your testimony made her cry." I raised an eyebrow. "All right, I run a community development firm." He continued. "We're working on creating a new residential strip, safe housing, food access, small clinics. We're looking for people with backbone. Stories. People the neighborhood will trust. We want you on the advisory board." I blinked. "Me? You own your story," he said. "You defended your boundaries. And you're not afraid to do the right thing even when it's hard. That's the kind of voice we need guiding this next project." For the first time in months, I didn't have a comeback. Just silence. Then, finally, "I'll think about it." He smiled. "You'll say yes." I walked out of that cafe and looked at the sky. It wasn't sunny or poetic, just cloudy and honest, like life. But something shifted that day. For the first time since Darren's cold Christmas text, I felt like my story wasn't ending, it was opening. Not as a grandmother shoved aside, not as a mother waiting by the window, but as Lorraine Mays, a woman reclaiming her presence, her voice, her legacy, not with rage, but with resolve. And when I walked back into my apartment, the pink envelope on the floor told me Lily had written again. This time, it simply said, "Grandma, can I come plant something with you soon? Love, Lily." By the time Lily's second letter arrived, I had already bought fresh gloves, turned over my garden soil, and chosen 3 new rose bushes to plant along the fence line. One was for me, One was for Jasmine and her son Micah, and one was for Lily. The future was starting to bloom again, quietly, gently, and just how I liked it. But peace, as I've learned, never shows up without an audience. And sometimes that audience doesn't clap. They interfere. Melanie, for example. It started with the mail. Specifically, my mailbox is being tampered with. Twice in 1 week, I noticed the keyhole had been scratched, as if someone tried forcing it open. I mentioned it to the building manager, Mr. Rollins, who told me 2 residents on the next floor reported similar disturbances. Probably kids, he said. I didn't say what I really thought, because kids don't usually leave crumpled candy wrappers and a wrinkled photo of me and Darren ripped down the middle under the mailbox slot. But adults with grudges? That's another story. I kept quiet. For now. Then came the phone call from the housing nonprofit that had taken over the Cherry Ridge property. Jasmine was in tears. Ms. Mays, I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to call. What's wrong? There's a woman who keeps parking across the street, taking photos. One day she yelled something about stealing a house from her family. I was too scared to confront her. My heart dropped. Did you get a license plate? Yes. I wrote it down. She read it to me. It was Melanie's. I wish I could say I was surprised. I wasn't. People like Melanie don't take consequences as correction. They take them as insults. And she was turning her wounded pride into intimidation. I had a decision to make. Take legal action again, or handle it the way I now handled everything, precisely, purposefully, and without losing my soul in the process. I called Marcy, updated her, and she advised filing for a restraining order. But before we could even draft it, something unexpected happened. A letter came from Franklin Wade, the real estate developer who had asked me to join his advisory board. It was an official invitation, but it wasn't just to sit on a board. It was to lead the formation of a new community trust for older women displaced by housing insecurity. They trust you, Franklin said in the cover note. We want to name it the Lorraine Mays Foundation, if you'll let us. I stared at the letter like it was a foreign language. Me, a woman whose own family had tried to erase her? He wanted to build a legacy in my name. I sat for a long time with that thought. Then I signed the acceptance letter. I was no longer a forgotten mother. I was becoming a founder. Later that week, as I began preparing for the first community meeting, a package arrived at my door. No return label. Inside, one of Lily's old baby dresses. It had a post-it note on it. She'll outgrow this soon, just like she'll outgrow you. No signature. But I knew, and I snapped, not in anger, in focus. I went straight to the police department. I filed the report. I included the license plate, the letter, the incident at the nonprofit property, the tampered mailbox, and now the unsolicited threat disguised as a gift. Detective Heller, a stocky woman in her 40s with no patience for foolishness, listened carefully, then looked at me square in the eye. You're being stalked, ma'am, and harassed. We'll take it seriously. She issued a formal warning to Melanie and placed her under temporary no-contact status pending investigation. The silence that followed, heavenly. A week passed. No slash mailbox. No drive-bys. No passive-aggressive emails. And then another letter. But this one was from Darren. Mom, I didn't know about what Melanie was doing. I only just found out after she got that police warning. She didn't tell me. I've been staying with a friend and trying to figure things out. I know it's probably too late, but I want to see you. Alone. No yelling. No guilt. Just to talk. I miss you. Darren. I sat on my porch holding the letter for a long time. Not out of sentiment, but weighing. Darren hadn't defended me publicly. He hadn't corrected the lies Melanie told the kids. But this felt like something closer to honesty. Or maybe exhaustion. I agreed to meet at a public cafe, mid-morning, neutral ground. He looked thinner than I remembered. His beard was scruffy, and his shirt had a stain on the sleeve. Not quite the clean-cut son I once knew, but maybe that's what happens when reality takes hold. He didn't hug me. I didn't offer. We sat. "I'm not here to change your mind," he said. "Good. I just needed to look you in the eyes and say, I forgot who you were." That caught me off guard. "You were always doing," he continued, "cooking, helping, fixing, paying." And I started to treat it like background noise, like something I was entitled to. I stopped seeing you as a person. I sipped my tea, still said nothing. He rubbed his hands together. "Lily asks about you almost every day. She keeps your letters in a shoebox." Tears formed in my eyes before I could stop them. "She remembers your lasagna, your garden, your lullabies." I didn't know how much she missed you until she said she wanted to plant a rose and name it Grandma. My throat closed. "She's the reason I'm here," he added quietly. "Not Melanie, not guilt. Lily. She reminded me what love looks like and what it doesn't." Finally, I looked at him fully. "You can't undo what's been done." "I know, but you can choose how you walk forward." He nodded. "I'm trying." I left the cafe that day with a letter in my coat pocket and a crack of light in my chest. Not forgiveness, but possibility. That night, I called Lily. We talked about rainbows and snails and a dog named Tucker she met at school. At the end of the call, she whispered, "I love you, Grandma." And for the first time in a long, long time, I said it back with my whole chest. You don't truly know the power of your voice until the first time a microphone makes it echo across a room full of strangers. I stood behind the podium that day wearing my best navy blue coat, the one my husband bought me our last Christmas together. The hem had been repaired twice, but the wool still held strong. Like me, the banner above my head read, "The Lorraine Mays Foundation, Inaugural Opening Ceremony." Franklin Wade gave the introduction. His voice was confident, generous. But when he handed me the mic, the room went still. 100 people in folding chairs, reporters with pens poised, women from shelters, children clinging to their mothers. And Lily, right there in the front row beside Darren, her tiny fingers clutching a fresh pink rose. I took a breath, and I spoke. I never planned to be the woman on this stage. I thought my role in life was behind the curtain, raising, supporting, cooking, listening, being the one who gave. Polite laughter. But somewhere along the way, I gave too much without asking to be seen. I disappeared into the wallpaper of my own life. Now it was quiet. And when I finally stood up and took something back, something that had always belonged to me, people called it shocking, selfish, cold. I paused, but I didn't take revenge. I took responsibility for my worth, for my story, for my presence. And now I give this not as an apology, not as a handout, but as a correction for all the women who've been left behind, for those who were never expected, never invited, never thanked. Applause rose, slow but strong. I was erased, but today we write ourselves back in. The applause was thunderous, and in the crowd, Lily stood and clapped hardest of all. The foundation launched that spring with a $2.5 million endowment secured by Franklin's firm and matching community grants. We opened 3 transitional homes within the first 6 months. Jasmine became our community liaison. She now speaks at schools and works with mothers who need help, not pity. And I didn't become famous, but I became visible. Melanie, predictably, made one final attempt to smear my name. An op-ed in a regional newspaper, full of condescending phrases like elder confusion and emotional coercion, trying to paint me as unstable, manipulated by lawyers, turning her children's lives into a PR stunt. She even accused me of weaponizing generosity. I didn't respond, but the city did. Letters poured into the foundation. Social workers, veterans, women from church groups, even young fathers. Thank you for proving we don't have to be quiet about being used. My mom went through the same thing. She cried when I read her your speech. I finally visited my grandmother for the first time in 5 years. Because of you, Melanie's words died out. Ours didn't. One summer morning, I was in the garden planting lilies, real ones, now, when I heard small footsteps behind me. Grandma? I turned. Lily stood at the gate in a yellow sundress, freckles blooming across her cheeks, clutching a small clay pot she had painted herself. Bright pink, with the words, "You are still the root." I dropped my gloves. She ran into my arms. We spent the afternoon in the dirt, planting, laughing, and singing that silly old tune I used to hum while brushing her hair. Darren came by later, quiet, respectful, no pride left, only gratitude. He brought lemonade and offered to fix the creaky garden bench. I let him. That was enough. Not forgiveness, not full repair, but presence, genuine, earned. The last surprise came in the form of a grant proposal. The city council was allocating land for a permanent housing development. They wanted to name the street after someone local who had turned personal hardship into lasting change. They picked me, and I picked the name. Not Lorraine Lane or Maze Court, but something truer, Presence Way, because that's all I ever wanted, to be seen, to be remembered, to matter. As I sit on my porch now, sipping tea, Lily beside me drawing rainbows in chalk on the sidewalk, I smile. I was the woman they forgot, the mother they excluded, the grandmother they lied about. But I stood up anyway, and I built something stronger than a house. I built a name no one could erase. So to anyone who's been taken for granted, don't wait for permission. Reclaim your place. Take the property. Take your presence back.